So, after a questionable time with the MOT and air conditioning condenser and a couple of questionable trips to Skoda, unfortunately my Baleno is no more. Well, it still exists, but not mine anymore. Gone hybrid. Got a Swace. I said we'd review one if we ever got a chance to drive one. I've driven one. I have one. Unfortunately though, as I'm recording this, well, not unfortunately, it's still here. Mycroft II. I named it because it annoys Sarah. Swift was called Algernon. The first one was called Mycroft, and this one, because it's identical, is called Mycroft 2. New one might have to be called Patrick Swayze. I made the joke in the video, but anyway. So this has been recorded, this bit at least, it's been recorded on the 17th of October. So when I next do a recording, that'll be something very different. And here is the new boy. Hybrid Swace. So, as you've seen, the car is here. And I like it a lot. I've been driving it now for nearly a week. I have been instances, as I've mentioned, where I went for an invisible clutch pedal. My old car is not as of yet up for sale on the John Banks website. A little bit of me meant to make a dig at a family member who doesn't believe in buying new cars, and their car is currently not in the greatest of shape. So I'm like, tell you what, go buy that one. It's been well running. My old Baleno, that is. So I'll, in a little bit in this video, I'll do a walk around the car, ins and outs, show you all what it's like. Now, it is essentially a Toyota, even on all the service documents from John Banks. Well, it's actually not on the service documents, sorry. During the sales process, I said, look, it's effectively a Toyota. We have to do things differently because it's a Toyota. It's got a better value because it's a Toyota, and so on and so forth. It's a good example of how platform sharing can work. There are a couple of things about the car that aren't fantastic at the moment. Mainly, Android Auto won't work on the car, and when I've looked, the Toyota isn't supported by Android Auto. Some Toyotas are, just not this one. Doesn't mean to say it won't happen, and it doesn't mean to say that it won't suddenly become available, because when I've looked at the list of cars that were supported, Suzuki Baleno wasn't on the list, but I got Android Auto working on that without a problem. The only reason I want Android Auto is because this car hasn't got a sat-nav, whereas the Baleno did. It'd be nice to have that working, so I've got the visual cue rather than just working on audio cue from the sat-nav. I don't particularly like having too many things suctioned onto my windscreen. Only really might like having the dash cam on there, but if I must, I might have to get something to mount my phone on it for Android Auto for using the sat-nav, or just make sure Sarah's with me so she can direct. But like I said, I like it. You'll notice it's a different colour to what I would normally go for. My Swift was red because it was a free colour. First Baleno was white because it was a free colour. Second Baleno was white because I didn't want people to know it had been changed, but also because it was a free colour. That colour was £600. I could have got it flat white. Now, I don't mean the coffee that McDonald's make. I could have gone for a flat white, but with where that car is parked, we've got an oak tree growing just one side of it, and there's an acorn tree growing the other side. Unfortunately, during the summer, there was so much sap coming off the tree. Sometimes it looked like it had rained, and no, it was just sap. And because we live next to a field which is next to the A14, granted we're quite a distance away from the A14, but doesn't stop the dust and the emissions and things, and the pollen, etc., coming off the field. There were times that Baleno's paint was borderline ruined. Ruined as in, with where the pollen had managed to get, I just could not exert enough pressure to clean it off. It needed more specialist tools to clean than I had at my disposal. Oh, sorry, I just had a notification the video's lagging. Fantastic. So if things are going out of sync, you know why. So I thought, anyway, was I with this car? So I thought, so yes, so the white paint in the Baleno sometimes just looked terrible. It might have been a 3-year-old car, but sometimes where the paint was sort of sticky and borderline matte, there are times where it really did look like a much older car, which it wasn't. And yeah, so I did want blue. They had none in, there were none in the country, so I went black. I could have got it in bronze, which looked okay, or there was brown. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like brown cars. They just... There are a lot of colours that should not be on a car, but there are some cars that make it work. Now, ordinarily I would, for example, I would say absolutely no to a yellow car. But for some reason, yellow is a fantastic colour for a Lamborghini. Heck, even bright pink kind of works for a Lamborghini, more so than a lot of other models. But brown, I think, is universally the one colour that really doesn't work on a car. It belongs in the 70s. So thankfully I got it in black. It doesn't look so bad, but there's a lot of sap coming down at the moment, which is a concern. Separate problem I need to speak to the landlord about when he's not being a cunt. I managed to get the car up and around where I have to park my car. I'll show you all what I have to do and how wide it is to reverse. Now, it was okay in a car about the size of a the size of a Baleno. So for those people who haven't seen one, probably a little bit smaller than the Ford Focus. If you've got something about Ford Focus, Vauxhall Astra-sized, Honda Civic even, it's probably it is a very straightforward reverse around the corner. Sarah's dad has a Peugeot 207 station wagon. It's a state, but SW is what station wagon on the end of its name. And he's managed to get his car up and around, but because of the way the plants are, it's a bit of a tighter get around. However, he managed to get his car up there. I think this car is a little bit bigger. My dad's managed to get his Ford Cougar kind of up and around. Not all the way around, but he certainly got it through the gate. And if you've seen the shape Ford Cougar he's got, it's not the current shape, so it's not the 71 shape. I think it's the 68 or 69 shape car, maybe even the 70. No, it's the 70 shape Cougar. But still, it's a very, very big car. Getting used to driving it has been quite amazing. Sorry, my chair is sinking again. Bastard chair. Oh, if you want to help me get a better desk chair, you can donate to paypal.me/velocitykinetics. Could really do with a better desk chair, actually. This one just keeps letting itself down. It was an IKEA job years ago. I don't think it was designed for as much use as it's had. Or people who are as heavy as us, but not for lack of trying to lose weight. It's been interesting getting used to driving hybrid. The hybrid experience I had in the Swift was rubbish, but even talking to the guys at John Banks, I said, look, that hybrid system in the Swift, it's okay, but it's not fantastic. And I've discovered why it felt like it needed so much work. The engine in the new Swift is a 1.2 4-cylinder petrol engine with a hybrid sort of style KERS system on top. Now, KERS would imply you've got push to pass, which you haven't. It just deploys the electric energy when it thinks it needs it, assuming you've driven the car economically enough to generate the electricity to give it a surge. But the shape of the Swift is the same shape as what my sister has, and my sister's one has the same booster jet engine in that I had in the Baleno. 109 PS. My first Swift had 92 PS. The new Swift has 84. So that's why it was such hard work. I was concerned when I got this car, because remember when I did the Swace video originally, when I heard it was being launched, I was concerned about what it was and what they were doing. A bit on the fence, as I recall. Ultimately, I thought, maybe not. However, it is very much a sort of car that needs to stay in Suzuki's lineup. Because if you think about it, in Suzuki's lineup, you've either got super minis or you've got 4x4s. There's no go-between. and people like myself don't like 4x4s, we don't like SUVs, because they don't offer anything more. It's like, if you look at an S-Cross or a Vitara, it's like, actually, if you can live with a little bit less boot space, get a Ford Focus. Find a cheap Mondeo. Get a Skoda Scala. That was a fucking farce on looking at Skoda. So a bit of background as to why it actually went. So why I actually changed the Baleno. Because I've said in other videos I wasn't planning to change it, so on and so forth. And I wasn't. Even with shoulder pain and back pain, after long journeys, sometimes even just after my short commute, or shortish when I've had to go cover other branches, it went for its MOT in September. It passed its MOT, but the air conditioning condenser that we went on and on about last year is breaking again. Now, when I've had the MOT back, John Banks said they were going to speak to Suzuki about doing it under warranty again, because it was the initial repair was done under warranty, under guarantee, factory recall, whatever you call it, and it failed. So therefore, they should do it again. And the guys at John Banks were on my side over that. But I can feel this chair sinking yet bloody again. I've tried sitting in it differently. But they'd have to get Suzuki to admit there was a fault. Now, given John Banks installed the part that Suzuki supplied them, surely that it should be a no-brainer as to what needs to happen. But evidently, it is not quite that straightforward. So, I went away and had a thought. And I was thinking about what to do. Because I like the Baleno. With the tread levels left on the tyres, concerning that I've chewed through a set of rear Goodyears fairly quickly. But I think it brought a little bit of ride quality back to the car. But within the next sort of 6 or 7 months, based on the mileage I've been doing, in the next 6 or 7 months, I would need 4 new tyres. Another service was due in a few months, and then there would be whatever happened with the air conditioning. Now, even regardless of whether I dipped into my own pocket and bought a new condenser, or whether Suzuki did it under warranty, you can't get away from the fact that by the time the new one would have been installed, that would have been condenser number 3 in 3 years, which is something I did not want to do. I spoke to Suzuki briefly about what I could get, because the price at the moment in the UK of second-hand cars is going up. Demand is up because they can't get new cars in. Brexit supply, microchips, whatever it is. Something. Personally, I think it's fucking Brexit, but anyway. As in, I don't agree with it, but not the time to do that. Go into that at least. So I had a bit more bargaining power with the car going in. More people want more cars. The fact I didn't want an SUV limited quite a lot of things, and I'm pretty sure initially Sarah did not want to look at a Swace. She said maybe it's time to look away from Suzuki, which, to be fair, is not a bad, and was not a bad thing to do, because if nothing else, if I ended up back at Suzuki, at least I've gone elsewhere and gone, I can't do it. Now, within the criteria that I had, and also what Sarah would like, because she's eventually going to drive that car, but she's got to be a passenger. So just because I might like driving something, if she's not comfortable as a passenger, that's not very good. And because we want to start a family fairly soon, very soon, it needs to be something that doesn't then need replacing again when hopefully the pitter-patter of tiny footsteps comes coming. So that really, really drastically brought down what we could look at. I have always liked the sound of the Subaru Levorg. It looks to me it looks a very good looking estate. It sounds loaded with tech. Sounds like it's got a brilliant engine, but out my price range. At least brand new, massively out my price range. There's no Subaru nearby. I'd have to go all the way to Stowmarket, which some people would say, well, you've only got to go 20 miles, it's not that bad. Which, no, it's not necessarily that bad. But if you're thinking about trading your car in, you don't want to slap too many miles on it, because if you do go here, there and everywhere, suddenly you've done 1,000 miles and your car's worth that bit less because you've done that many more miles whilst you've been looking at a new car to buy. You know, stupid logic, but it's logic. It was at my price range. The used supply is very erratic. I also considered an Impreza, and again, the used supply was becoming very erratic. Some becoming available really quickly, some not available for a very long time, selling out quick, you name it. Just not something I could work with on the time frame I had to work with. I considered Honda. Didn't try one. I considered Honda because the Suzuki dealership shares the lot with a Honda dealership. Same dealer chain, still John Banks, just Honda. Now, I'd done loans and things for customers who have bought Hondas from there, and they've all been fantastically reviewed by my customers that I speak to. And for the life of me, I don't remember why I didn't have a look at one. I think from what I'd seen, because I'd often walked around the used forecourt when my car was in, cars seemed overpriced for what I could see they had on them. I think that is why I never investigated it any further. I could be wrong, but I don't remember. There was a reason, and I honestly don't remember it. Time to put the chair back up. I considered Renault. Sarah wasn't a fan of Renault. Years ago when I got my first car, I considered a Clio, but she didn't feel safe in one, so we didn't go for one. I steered clear of anything German, mostly, and I'll explain why I say mostly. Steer clear of anything German, because I would have been tempted by a 3 Series BMW, probably an estate, maybe the saloon, but probably the estate. Well, I had a ride in one when I was in the police, and the ride was not as hard as I thought they would be. I must have had a ride in an M badged one or something, because the ride I had in one before was terrible. But the other thing is with BMWs, and again from speaking to customers I've done loans and things for recently, they said that their Beamers were needing to go back to BMW specialists because so many first-party electronics in them that your local garage, like Big Dave's garage, can't do the repairs. Now, some people in the middle of all this, some people might say, "Hang on. You like your little cheap Suzuki? Why not find a Ford Fiesta or something?" Which is a fair comment. I have to do some long drives coming up. One of Sarah's family members has been ill, and when we got back off honeymoon, we were told that she didn't have the family member in question did not have very long to live. And things have rapidly changed. However, we need to be ready to go and have a comfortable car to do that long, potentially very stressful journey in one go and quite comfortably. So that's why things like Fiestas, Polos, Corsas were out the question. Vauxhall was out the question in its entirety, which I was very tempted by a Vauxhall near where I park my car for work when I'm at work. They had a used X-Dem on sale. It was a Vauxhall Astra Griffin. Now, I don't know much about Astra spec levels or Vauxhall spec levels as a whole. That could have been the most basic one they were trying to flog. It could also have been the nicest. But Sarah's uncle has had problems with his Vauxhall. I don't know if he still has it, but certainly when he had one, he had problems with it. Some of it sounds like it might have been the dealer, but also you can't get around the fact it was a Vauxhall Astra. Now, he is a car person, he is a petrol head, and he loves his motorbikes, and I would be foolish to ignore if he was going, "Oh, I just didn't like the dealer," then, it'd be like, well, I'll try that dealer. So, but the fact that he's had problems with his Vauxhall in the past, can't afford to ignore that argument or that piece of information. My dad nearly bought a Zafira from that dealership, the same Vauxhall dealership, the one I saw the Astra at, not the one where Sarah's uncle bought his from. The one where I saw the Astra at, he nearly bought a Zafira years ago, and he was left hanging by the salespeople for ages. And this is a man who's on crutches and back pain, can't really afford to be stood around waiting. And I thought, no, I can't deal with that. I thought about Alpha. I'd loved a Giulia. Too expensive to insure. Volvo, I'd have loved an S60. I really would still love to somehow find a way to have an S60 or a V60. But if I can afford to buy one, I can't afford to repair one. My parents have had Volvos before and they've had big ones. My dad's had several V70s, fucking gorgeous vehicles. But if you can afford to buy it, you've got to afford to keep it on the road, and Volvo parts are not cheap. And with the budget I was working on, at least monthly payment budget, I probably would have been buying one that was either high-ish mileage or maybe a little bit older than I would have liked, and therefore a little bit closer to all that stuff than I would have liked. So on the off chance one day, Sarah and I had been, I can't remember where we had been. We're coming back from Asda, but we can't remember why we'd been out for something. But on the way back, I thought, fuck it, let's go to Skoda. Because I'd had a look at Skoda once before. Didn't get very far, but that was a dealership up in Middlesbrough, and I think they were just setting up as a dealer up there. Or that particular chain was just setting up. So I'm not going to say anything negative about that chain. Beyond, it would have been nice to have had a response. But if they were, like I say, if they were just setting up, then I can't say anything more than that. So we went and saw them. I was having a look at a Scala, because I knew it was a reasonable hatchback, and the Octavia, both saloon and estate. And the guy came out, he was a really nice guy, I have to admit. The man was very nice. He said we could do that, because I like to have my paint treated on my car. I've got some sort of weird ceramic treatment on it this time, and I think that's what they did rather than Diamond Bright. And he said they could do that, they could put a reversing camera on them, on whichever Skoda I chose, if it didn't have one on it already, and we could go from there. And I sat in the Skoda, and what sold me on the fact that the Baleno had to go was the fact I sat in the Scala, and I was like, oh, even though this seat is not in the position I would put it in for myself, I am so much more comfortable. And unfortunately, that's what cemented the Baleno having to go. So we then spoke to the guy once we had a look at both. He ran some numbers. We said, oh, that's a little bit more than we could do. Now, he gave us a number we would need to come up with a deposit. I refinanced the loan I had, and the interest came out far more favourable. Monthly payment came out far more favourable than it ever had before. Gave me the money I needed to put down for the deposit. The car was in negative equity because of the crack on the bumper. I did look at getting that repaired, and one place was they were needing at least a 3-week lead-in time because they were that busy. And even then he said he can give me a quote based on what it looks like, but until he starts taking it to pieces, the number might start going up. And somewhere else reckoned it was going to cost 800 quid to repair. John Banks said it actually needs a new bumper when they took it in. So I sorted all that out, and I then emailed the guy back at Skoda and said, look, I've got the money. Can we come for a test drive? Because, you know, it's all very well saying you've got the money and looking at all these different things, but if the car's not comfortable to drive, there's no point taking it any further. Now, bizarrely, rather than just letting us go for the test drive, he started running through the numbers again. And the numbers were different to what he told us. Because I even ran the numbers by Sarah. I was like, am I remembering this wrong? She's like, no. Sarah said, no, those numbers aren't wrong. This is what you were told. And I was told the money that I'd managed to free up would have been enough to bring a monthly payment in line with what I could afford. And that would have been the end of the matter. And for the first time in my life, I didn't lose my temper, but I basically said, look, you've wasted my time. If this was the conversation we had 2 weeks ago, then we were told you to forget it then. I was so cross. Sarah then said, well, let's go around to Suzuki. Went round to Suzuki, asked if they had a Swace to test drive. They had one to test drive. Drove it basically from where the dealership is almost all the way home because we live in a village. Drove around some of the small roads nearby. Got it up to speed on the A14 and took it back. And we were sold. Put it all through. John Banks did the finance for me, got the best interest rate, which was fantastic. Put down that deposit, took in a little bit of negative equity on the car because of the damage. They reckon it would have barely broke even, might have made a couple of hundred on it if it hadn't had the damage. And that was it. I had to wait about a week for it to come in. I think the whole process took about a week and a half, 2 weeks to go from saying, yes, I'll buy, to here's the keys. That little Baleno was such a good car. I learned so much driving it. And here's the thing, you should never underestimate what car you've got for what it can teach you. Because that Baleno, granted, some of it you would say, well, you taught yourself, and like, yeah, but it was the sort of car that encouraged the teaching. It taught me about double clutching, it taught me about engine braking, both for cornering, as in having performance cornering, and for your fuel economy. I learned about lifting coast. I learned a lot of economical driving, fast driving, just going absolutely batshit crazy, catching a slide. That was not an intentional slide, though. I had to catch one that, where we live, there's been a lot of sugar beet. There was a lot of sugar beet farming last year, and the roads were slick with mud. So, yeah, that was an interesting one, to say the least. And it just basically taught me an appreciation for some of the lower end spec cars and simpler ways of doing things, which is nothing bad. It is an infinitesimally good thing. Because whilst now with the Swace, I will be driving a completely different way. I know I can do that other stuff that I taught myself. Should things go the way that I'd love them to go in my head, it would mean that I could do all sorts of different things driving wise later on in my life, and potentially velocity kinetics related. Granted, a lot of that stemmed into fairyland, but I'm allowed to daydream. I'd never thought for a long, especially at such a time of economic worry, that I'd ever have a car like what I have. Now, this time I definitely don't plan on replacing the car, barring a good offer for mine on a trade-in. That is it. I think it's a really good piece of equipment. It's a good way for Suzuki to get into the market on the type of vehicle that it is. It's a good money maker if they market it properly. It fills a massive gap in their lineup. Sure, it could be better being more Suzuki throughout. I would be curious to see how it would have worked, because the 1.8 engine in the Toyota engine it's got, 1.8 4-cylinder, I think it only puts out 115 PS, I think. It's not that much more than what the 3-cylinder 1-litre turbo put out. I would have loved to know just how well that 3-cylinder turbo would have worked with that hybrid technology. Because then I think you'd had a little fucking rocket ship under your foot. I'm going to sign this video off here, because effectively part 2 for this will be a walk around, and depending how long that is, maybe we'll go for a drive. But that is the ins and outs of why the car has gone, what happened along the way, and my own learning from going forwards. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a like and subscribe, because we need to get the pay. I want to get more subscriptions. I want to get more things going on this channel. Please share it with your friends. Like the Facebook page. Please donate to us. paypal.me/Velocity Kinetics. Because the more you donate, the more we can get more content, get better equipment, and so on and so on and so on. I'm not really completely sure how I want to sign this video off, as in what tone. Because I'm hopeful for the future with having a hybrid. I miss the Baleno, having had time to sit and think about it. It's like, it's odd to think you can have an emotional connection to a car, especially something as small and simple as that Baleno. But for me, that last one, I really, Mycroft the second, because I gave it a name. It's funny, I gave my car the name just to annoy Sarah, and I kept doing it because I found it amusing that she was getting annoyed. So the first one's called Mycroft, this one became Mycroft. The second, because it was the same. This new one won't have a name, because when you've got when your wife works night shifts quite frequently and is a nurse, you know she can kill you very quickly and somehow get away with it. I'm not wanting to find out the hard way, to be honest. Maybe I might, to annoy her, might occasionally refer to it as Patrick Swayze, but that's about it. Because it's Swace and the joke I made in the original video. But anyway. And also, I'm a bit spaced out because it's been a hell of a week at work. I don't normally do a manager's job as much as I want to do one and have one. And because my manager's been off sick, I've had to step up and do the manager job, which I'm not paid for. And we've been short-staffed. And my brain is frazzled. Very much so. And I hope everyone, once you've watched this one, give episode 100 a watch. Because we talk about what makes driving so fun. So, like, subscribe, then go back and watch some of the old stuff. See you later.